Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. Uh, I'm Adrian Danila, your host, and this is Multifamily Chronicles. Our guest today is Mike Roeder. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thank you so much for having me on, Adrian. I really appreciate it. Excited to be here.
For those of you in the audience that don't know Mike, he's the co-founder of Granite Towers Equity Group. He's also the co-author of the book, 4 Steps to Successfully Passive Investing. And he is a co-host of the podcast, Keep It Real Estate. So with that being said, Mike, please tell us a little bit about your background and tell us a little bit about your investment business, a little bit about your podcast, about the book that you co-authored.
Sounds great. So I'm going to rewind back to about 2008, 2009 era. I had a full-time corporate position in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Minnesota is where I reside right now. And we had bought a couple of rental properties. And what had happened was I knew that real estate was the path that I wanted to go to build my passive income, to build my wealth. However, I was experiencing some burnout because what I was doing is I was working probably 50, 60 hours a week, about an hour from my primary home. I had 2 kids and I was doing everything on the single family side. So we had a handful of single family rentals. I was doing the leasing. I was doing, the evictions. I was doing all the maintenance. So that way I could cash flow on those properties. And I started to experience some burnout where, I was getting home from my corporate position, saying hi to my family quick, and then I'd run another hour up to my rental properties, take care of whatever issues were arising on those properties. And so I finally took a step back and I'm like, all right, I got to make a change here. What am I going to do differently to be able to continue to build my passive income and my wealth, but still have time for my family and my hobbies and my friends and everything else? And so I started reading every book I could, had been chatting a lot with my now business partner. He was my good friend back then. And we decided that multifamily was the game that I wanted to get into. He was already buying multifamily apartments. And so we ended up pooling up our money and we bought a 20 unit together, bought an 8 unit together. And then eventually we started our company, Granite Towers Equity Group, about 7 years ago, and started syndicating projects. So pooling people's money together to buy bigger, larger, nicer projects in better markets. So that worked really well for us. We were able to put third-party property management companies in place. We were able to put on-site personnel, so on-site team members on the property. And, we really started to see the cash flow increase. We were able to force the appreciation or bring the values up of the property. And that's really where we fell in love with multifamily. And, my corporate position, I was an insurance agent. I did that for about a decade. It was fantastic. But, at the same time, I was really excited to step out of that position, eventually once I became financially free.
So, Mike, I want to go back a little bit, right? And just kind of get more granular on your journey, if you don't mind.
Yeah, definitely.
So, at what point did you quit your full-time job and you actually went full-time investor? How many properties you had at the time?
That's a great question. I actually only quit my full-time position about 2 years ago. And what happened is I had a sales position. And so I was able to wean down my hours. About 4.5 years ago, I went from 50, 60 hours a week down to about 25. And then the last 1.5 to 2 years, I was working, maybe 15 hours a week. So that allowed me to continue to build my multifamily business while I was still working in the corporate field. And then finally, a couple of years ago, it just didn't make sense to continue, focusing on both avenues.
I'm sure that some in the audience are gonna be curious, or how did you actually make it work? So let's start with your first investment property. Like, what type of money financing did you use? How did you get to the second, to the third? How many single families properties you had until you decided to go multifamily? If you want to share that.
Yeah, definitely. So my first rental property, we house hacked. So it was my girlfriend. She's now been my wife for 14 years. We decided to buy a 4-bedroom house. I believe I was 20, she was 19. We rented out 3 of the bedrooms out of the 4 bedrooms to friends. And that's where we fell in love with real estate. We're like, gosh, we're essentially living at this property for free, building equity. And we eventually turned that into a full-blown rental. Our second rental property, we took out a 401k loan. So we had a 401k and we took a disbursement where we were paying ourselves interest. And that worked fantastic. And then we did another single family rental property. That one, we took a personal loan from someone we knew. And then our first apartment complex, so we had 3 single family properties. So it was not a big portfolio, but it was still a lot of work, especially with it being over an hour from where I lived. And then we finally got into the multifamily business, bought that 8 unit and the 20 unit. Those we did a joint venture. So we had 3 individuals, myself, my business partner, one other gentleman, where we pooled our money together and bought those units. And then about 6 years ago, we bought our first apartment complex where we syndicated it. We raised capital from people that were looking to get into multifamily, but maybe they didn't have the knowledge or the time to do so or the money to buy their own apartment. And the first property that we bought there was a 45 unit apartment complex. Bought it for 2.1 million. We raised about 575,000. So it was a pretty small transaction in the scheme of things. And we sold it a few years later for about 4.1 million. So we did really well with that first transaction. And then we just scaled up from there. And fast forward to today, our typical deal is about 150 to 250 units that we do now.
How large is your current portfolio, Mike?
So we have just over 2,500 units currently that are active, most of it in Dallas-Fort Worth, and then we have a handful of properties up in Nashville as well, and then a couple sporadic properties across the U.S.
Got it. So I want to go back a little bit and ask, how did you find your passion for multifamily, and then what made you switch from single family to multifamily?
Yeah, so the way that I found multifamily was really through my business partner. So we were great friends. As I said, I was experiencing a little bit of burnout on the single family space. Plus, I wasn't cash flowing anything, because what was happening is an AC would go out or a furnace would go out, or I'd need to re-roof a project, and it would eat up all the cash flow from all 3 properties for a significant amount of time. I was still building equity. Those properties still did well, but Dan, my business partner, he was buying, 24 unit apartment complexes. He had a 12 unit, had another 20 unit, and he was experiencing nice cash flow. He wasn't doing all the day-to-day operations. So he had third-party property management taking care of, collecting rent and doing the maintenance and the evictions and all that fun stuff. And so I really took a step back, and it's like, gosh, that sounds much better than me doing from A to Z every single piece of the real estate investing. So that's where I fell in love with it. Bought a couple properties with him. Those worked really well, and we started to scale from there.
So remind me, please, how many units was the first multifamily that you did? Was it 20 or 8? Or
first multifamily was 20 units that we bought.
20 units. Great. Now, I want to ask you a little bit about syndication, right? So in my mind, syndication is, you have your company, you have your business set up, and you ask people to, contribute, people that can afford like 100,000, whatever they could contribute, like $5,000, and you give them shares in a deal, right? Per se. Or am I wrong in saying that? Or you just promise them a certain rate of return? Or how does syndication work?
Great question. It depends on the group. The way that we syndicate our deals is we'll go out, we'll find the property. So let's say, right now we're working on a 124 unit that will close in about a week from now in Dallas. So we found that property. We did all the due diligence on it. We put together the team, put together the business plan. We put it under contract. We put all the hard money up to get it under contract. And then once we have everything built out and we're certain that, we're going to be able to perform on the asset, then we bring it out to our investors. And what we do is we do a live webinar. It's typically about 45 minutes to an hour long, where we show all the investors the business plan. We show them the market, the sub-market, why we love the sub-market, the team that we have in place, all of our underwriting, the CapEx plan. And then the investors make a decision at that point, whether, they like the opportunity or they don't, and they can come in or not. So I think it's a great way to syndicate deals. You also have people out there that are doing open funds where you're investing in the team, but you don't necessarily know what deal you're investing in. That would be the other avenue of syndication. And then for us, it's all multifamily properties. That's our niche. That's what we love. That's what we're good at. So we focus on B and C class properties that are already built. They're pre-existing. We can step in and have cash flow from day one. And then we can drive the value up by, increasing the NOI as we implement our business plan.
Mike, what would you say is the hardest thing in a process here? Is it finding the deal, writing the business plan for it, underwriting it, or raising the funds? Which one is the most challenging out of the three?
So I would say upfront, it's twofold. Finding the right deal. I think there are quite a few deals out there right now, but for us, we're being very picky about what assets we bring on, because we do think that there's going to be a lot of opportunity in 2024, the end of 2023, and in 2025. But I also think raising capital is tough right now. And the reason for that is there's a lot of fear in the market. You have the media portraying the economy and, basically building the fear up amongst everyone. There's a lot of uncertain people because real estate values have come down over the last year, while interest rates have went up. So multifamily, you're seeing about a 21% price decrease across the board, if you look at it nationwide. And a lot of people get scared and they say, oh, I'm going to hold on to my liquidity. But if you take a step back, when you have a big price decrease like that, in my opinion, and a lot of successful individuals' opinions, that's the time to get in, is when people are fearful. When people are greedy and everyone's jumping in and the prices are near the top, that's probably where you're going to want to hold off. So right now we're really bullish on the multifamily, market, but you just need to be picky. You need to choose the right team. You need to underwrite properly.
So next question is for you in relation to what you expect, the level of opportunities you expect in a market. 20% decrease. You're talking about 20% between the current time versus like a year ago?
You're about saying a year to a year and a half ago, correct?
In average, the price has decreased like 20%. That's a significant price decrease, right? And this is the best time to buy, in my opinion. So I agree with you. Now, as far as the opportunity, what I'm seeing from an operations standpoint, right? A lot of the investors, and some of them are very large companies, extremely large. They have like hundreds of complexes. They have purchased them with variable interest rates, and they're at the point right now that they can make payments. They're basically on the edge of losing their properties, like being foreclosed on. And I think, are those the type of opportunities that you're referring to, that certain owners are going to lose them to the bank and the banks are going to sell them for cents on a dollar? Are those opportunities?
Yep, I think there's going to be a lot of foreclosures, a handful of them where the investor can't call the capital from their investors, or they can't refinance because they're underwater because they bought at a high price. They had variable debt, like you said, short-term loans, 2 to 3 years, and those are coming due. And so those properties may go back to the bank, or they may sell for a loss because they need to get out. They don't want to give it back to the bank. They don't want to foreclose, but yet they're still selling for significantly lower than what they purchased the asset for. So I think there's going to be a lot of those opportunities coming. We're already seeing it. We're getting a lot of calls from brokers where sellers need to get out, in a pretty short time period. And we have seen a couple of foreclosures in the market as well, where people over leverage themselves. They had variable rate debt. And then also the third piece, to some of these properties that have really went belly up, is the asset management. It's so crucial to step in and to do great asset management and to keep your eye on the ball. Whereas some of these multifamily operators, they get in, they let the third-party property management company do their thing. They step away, they're chasing other transactions, or maybe they have a full-time job. And when you're not paying attention to what's happening, on ground zero, the property's likely going to slip pretty quick, because there's no one that cares as much about the properties yourself. Even the property management company, yeah, they're incentivized to get as much income as they can, but they have a lot going on. So you need to oversee them very, very closely.
I will say, I will double down and say that they're partially incentivized. Of course, this is how they're making the money, is the business model from the management fees. But they're not going to look out for your property like you look out for it yourself.
Exactly right.
So, Mike, I wanted to ask you, could you share a few of the management companies that manage your deals?
Yeah, definitely. So we work with Walker Holder. We also work with Fairmont Management, and then Elmington Management. Those are a few companies that we work with across the nation.
Elmington for the Tennessee properties, I'm assuming.
Correct. You got it.
Okay. The CEO of Elmington is scheduled to come on the show.
Oh, great. Yeah, they
Yeah.
do a fantastic job. We've been very, very happy, with them. And that's something that anyone jumping in, whether you're a passive investor or an active investor, make sure you do your due diligence on who's managing the deal, who the asset managers are, who's the team behind the team, because it's so critically important.
How do you vet a management company, Mike? What does it take for a management company to get your business?
Yep. So what we'll do when we're vetting a new market, we'll fly into the market and we'll spend a good solid week in that market, mostly vetting management companies. We obviously talk to brokers, tour some deals as well. But the management company is going to be literally one of the biggest key pieces to your success. So a couple things that we do: ask for referrals amongst investors that that is huge. So if 5 or 20 or 100 investors, ask around and see who's using that company. What problems have they had? What kind of success have they had? If you don't know other people that are using that management company, go out to some blogs like, Bigger Pockets, or, there's a ton of other resources online where you can, post a forum and ask for some referrals and how people have experienced them. Second, ask the property management company for some referrals, and they'll be able to send you over some referrals of different companies that they manage for. Go and visit them at their corporate office, see what their team is like, meet their team members, see how organized their facility is, see what kind of training systems that they have in place. Ask for sample financial reports. That's going to show you a lot. And then go drive some of their properties. You should be able to pull up on apartments.com, a bunch of apartments in the area, and it'll show who manages those assets. So go drive 5, 10, 15 of their properties, and you'll start to see a trend. Are the properties dirty and there's garbage floating around and the landscaping is subpar, or do their assets look really good? So those are a few things that we would do to vet a management company.
Mike, if you were to say to evaluate your company today, the assets that you have under ownership, how much would you say would be the value of the assets that you're owning currently, your company owns?
Yeah, great question. So just over 300 million is what we currently have under management.
That's a great number.
Yeah.
What are the plans for the future? What's like 3, 5, 10-year plan for your company? You're at 300 mil now. What do you plan to be a year from now, 5, 10 years from now?
Yep. So I would say 5 to 10 years, we'd like to be at 10,000 units and growing. In the next year, again, we're laying off the gas a little bit and just being very picky on what assets we bring on. Again, because we think there's going to be a lot of benefits or opportunities coming down the pipeline. 3 years down the line, we plan on doing probably 3 to 7 transactions per year for the next 3 years. So wherever that puts us. And then we're also stepping into the triple net lease space as well. So we'd like to transact on 1 or 2 of those in the next year as well.
Excellent. Could you share a little bit of some insights into your company's philosophy and approach to, multifamily private equity investment?
Yeah, great question. So, first off, investors first. So what should we do right now to serve our investors? And then also tenants. We want to make spaces phenomenal for our tenants. So for instance, we're buying a property right now in Dallas. I mentioned it earlier. And the property has a lot of deferred maintenance. You go onto the property and both the pools are green. There's a ton of kids running around, but they don't have any space to play or to have fun or to cool down in the summer. And so for us, we want to come in well capitalized, stick a bunch of money into the asset, and make it a great community where the kids and the families just feel great living there. And then we also want to build a sense of community as well. So we do a lot of community events, holidays, back to school, and just bring the community together, give some freebies out, maybe do a school backpack drive or whatnot. And it just creates a sense of community. And then rewinding, back to investors first, one of the most important pieces of syndication is just keeping clear communication with limited partners. Everyone investing in the deal is part of the deal. They have partial ownership. And so you want to make sure that you're communicating the good, the bad, the ugly. You want to send out photos. You want to provide access to all the financial statements. So that way, if investors want to take a look at that, they have the ability to do so. And then another thing that we do on the first of every month is, provide where we're at with all of our CapEx projects. We'll do site visit videos every single month. So when we go out to the assets, we'll do a site visit video. So that way it feels like the investor is there at the property and they know exactly what's going on. So that's super important to us as well. And then the other aspect that's really important to us is giving back. So we have a couple of nonprofits that we give a portion of our profits to. One is Operation Underground Railroad. So they help with human trafficking, especially for kids, which is it's unbelievable how much it's happening across the US and in other countries. And then another nonprofit, which is called Every Meal, and it fills the hunger gap for kids that can't afford food on the weekends and the evenings after school is out. So it sends them home with a backpack full of food.
Those are very commendable initiatives, and I'll say, great job, very well done.
Thank you.
It's definitely a great way to show that you care about your community, and you show them some gratitude and something in return. Next, Mike, I wanted to ask you something about asset management versus management. I've been an operator for 20 years. I started at the very ground of the business as a groundskeeper part-time, worked my way up to vice president of facilities. I had under my oversight up to 32,000 units. I work for very large companies, for some of the largest companies in the country, operators, third-party operators. I've seen them, operating and managing deals for different investment groups. I will say that what I'm seeing as a trend lately, and I'm also very involved on LinkedIn as a platform. So there's a lot of conversation, right? And I'm conversating with a lot of folks like outside of the platform in private. And what I'm seeing more than anything, and this has been happening it's kind of a trend for the past 3 to 5 years, is that an investment group, purchases an asset, they do underwriting, they do a pro forma, they hand this to the third-party management company. But it's just, I think, the desire of acquiring the asset makes them make the operating budget so thin that it makes it very, very challenging for operators to meet. It's kind of like it's a very, very little to work with from an operating perspective. And what that does is that, it puts extra pressure on the site teams, on the operators, and that actually creates turnover, employee turnover. So no matter how well-intended the property management company is, if their goals that are kind of unrealistic to be met, then people are not going to be sticking around for too long because of the pressure, and it's just not making it for a great work environment. Pay could be one of them to the employees at the site level, to where I'm seeing ownership groups being super strict on the pay, saying we only want to pay this much. And in reality, if you do I've done, and I do all the time, market surveys and compare not just property A, but I compare with the property down the road, but with everybody that's in that sub-market, right? Even jobs, the remote jobs, because in all honesty, people know nowadays that they have options. They don't have to be a leasing agent or a maintenance technician. They could go work in a totally different industry, maybe, make more money, maybe make, not having to be on call for the maintenance personnel. So it makes it very challenging for the management company, no matter how great they are at their game, into getting, the proper talent. So with that being said, that's kind of, what I'm seeing from a investor standpoint. Do you see the same things, do you agree that those are real challenges? And how does your company try to, make things better, to mitigate, to like hand over management a realistic situation, right? A situation where everybody could win from.
Yep. So I definitely see that quite often in the industry. Like you said, people, whittle away their expense budget or increase their income budget, just to make a deal work. One thing I would highly recommend, and we do this, is we work hand in hand with our management company. So if there's a deal that actually looks like it's going to come to fruition and we're going to offer on it, we get on a 45-minute to 2-hour call with our management company and run through all of our expenses that we've budgeted out. And we've already used, previous deals that were currently operating in that submarket or nearby to model the expenses that we think we're going to achieve over the next year. But then we get the regional manager on, or we get the owner of the management company, and run through line by line. So payroll, is this actually realistic with what you're seeing across your portfolio, the management company's portfolio? Contract services, repairs and maintenance, utilities. And we make sure that the management company is 100% on board with our expense budget. And then for property taxes, we go to our property tax consultant and we say, hey, what do you believe conservatively is going to happen over the next 5 years with this asset at this price that we're looking to purchase it at? So we can come in, 99% confident that our property taxes are being, underwritten properly. Insurance, same thing. We're going to our insurance agent who has a ton of experience in the multifamily field, and we're getting advice from them what to use over the next 5 years. And then on the income side, very important to run through that with your management company and make sure that they believe in your plan 100%, because if they don't believe in it, it's probably not going to happen. And so the other income, you're going to want to talk that through them thoroughly, make sure that they believe in it and that it's achievable. And then for your pro forma rents, chat with your management company. But not only that, we go out to the actual competitive assets. So maybe the top 5 to 10 competitors that are in the local market, we shop them as prospective tenants. So we go in there and say, hey, we're looking to rent a unit. I'm moving from Minnesota for a job. Can you show me some of your units? How much is it? How much are you charging? What are you charging for laundry hookups, what are the other fees? And that way you can take a look at your business plan and say, gosh, I'm 100% confident, or at least close to 100%, that we're going to be able to achieve this business plan because other people in the market are already doing it. If there's not someone else doing it in the market, that's a red flag. You probably want to take a step back and dial down your pro forma rents or adjust something in your business plan.
Mike, it's a well-known fact that maintenance is the number one controllable expense on an asset, on a multifamily asset. Could you share a few of the strategies that you use on the maintenance side as an owner? Like, what programs do you have? Of course, outside of what the property management, the third-party property management, has in place for you. But are there certain programs that you require, you expect of them, that you have as a strategy for maintenance? For your deals?
That's a great question. So there's a few things that we typically do on our assets, especially if it's an older asset. So first off is, getting in and doing a water conservation project if we can. So you're replacing toilets, you're replacing shower heads, you're replacing aerators, and that cuts down on your utility cost quite a bit, but it also cuts down on your repairs and maintenance quite significantly. The other thing that we'll do is we'll take an inventory or a report on all the AC units and the HVAC units, and whichever ones are, old and they're likely having a lot of repair issues, we're going to replace those right when we step in the door, because we know our repairs and maintenance is going to go down significantly. Plus turnover is going to be less. So you're going to have tenants that, renew more often because their AC unit is working, especially down in Texas and Nashville. I mean, it gets hot in those two markets. And so that's very important. And there's some incentives out there. There's some programs, especially in certain neighborhoods, where a lot of times we can get 50 to 70% of the AC units paid for, by a local rebate program. So that helps out significantly. And we've done that on the past few assets. We're doing on the one that we're buying right now. Also, you want to make sure that you're in tune with your management company. And if there's a big issue, instead of just repairing the issue, maybe replacing the item. So whether it's appliances, HVAC units, AC units, If you have a small plumbing leak, maybe you have cast iron plumbing and you just want to replace the whole line so that way you don't have any additional issues. Things like that can really cut down on repairs and maintenance. And then contract services, prices are going up. Obviously, inflation's been rampant the last couple of years. So just shopping around your providers on a regular basis and making sure that you're getting the best bang for your buck, that's really important too.
Does your company have any type of remote access control to the particular units? In other words, there's technology out there right now that allows technicians to use their phone. I mean, technology has been around for decades in hotels, right? I go to a hotel, I don't have to stop by the front desk. I check in on my phone, I go use my phone to unlock the door and everything. The same concept has gained, I guess, popularity in a multifamily industry. And I think that that's a very good way to not just add value to the assets, but also to put some time in to your maintenance technicians days. Are those programs anything of any, like, have you been interested looking into those programs? Maybe you have them at your properties, or maybe you don't.
So we do have tech packages at a couple of our properties where, first off, the tenants really love it because, they have a key fob to get into their property. Their thermostat is digitally controlled, so they can control it by their phone. There's some other, big advantages as well. But like you said, the maintenance tech can control it. You can control the temperature from the office. So when someone moves out, drop the temperature or increase it, I guess, depending upon if it's winter or summer. And that saves on utilities. So it's been a great way for us to drive additional value up. I do think it depends on the asset and what your demographic is. If it's going to catch on with that demographic and if they can afford the additional rent, for those additional amenities that you're installing. But it's been a great avenue for us to take.
Mike, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about you as a podcast host. Tell us a little bit about your podcast. What are the topics? Who are the guests? Typically, what are the conversations like on your podcast?
Yeah, so it's called the Keeping It Real Estate Show. Myself and Dan Breezy are the hosts. And we typically have multifamily operators or commercial real estate investors on the show. The show is really focused around passive investing and investing in multifamily assets. We do talk about other asset classes as well in the commercial real estate realm. And usually the episodes are 30 minutes to 60 minutes. And then Dan and I also, record some one-off podcasts, just talking about the market, talking about multifamily in general, what's happening, talking about office, retail, and so on. So it's been a lot of fun. We're about 100 episodes in, and definitely check it out if you haven't.
Absolutely. You mentioned passive investing. I'd like to ask you to stay a little bit on that topic, and say, elaborate a little bit on this concept, and how is it different from other real estate investment strategies?
Yeah, so you have two different ways of investing in real estate. You have an active investor where you're doing the day-to-day operations, or you're doing the asset management. So you're essentially buying that property and you're overseeing it, or you're syndicating the property and you're overseeing it, making sure that the property has success. And then you have passive investing on the other end of the spectrum, where you're teaming up with someone that's the active investor that's doing, everything that needs to be done to make that property a success, but you're just funding a portion of that investment or all of it. So for instance, we have passive investors that come in anywhere from 60,000, per transaction up to millions of dollars. They invest with us because they trust us as their team, and they want to get into multifamily investing, but maybe they don't have the time, or they don't have the knowledge, or they don't have the funds to do it on their own. And so they're, trusting a general partner like us to go out, implement the plan, find the property, put together the team, and make sure that it's a success over the next 3 to 5 years. And it's a great option to build passive income and to build wealth, while not, depleting your personal time and your freedom of time. So I love the option. When I first got into multifamily syndication, that's actually exactly what I did. I invested in 5 different deals passively, and before I actually was a general partner, just to get a good feel for what was happening in the industry, how people communicated, what they were doing with the deal, and then also to put my money to work.
I want to stay a little bit on passive investment, and want to go back to your book, right? That you wrote, 4 Steps to Successful Passive Investing. What are some great takes from the book? What are some things, like, I guess, main themes that someone could take from the book from reading it?
Yeah, so there's, in my opinion, there's 4 steps to getting into a highly likely, successful passive deal. And the first one is vetting the team, so the sponsorship team, one of the most important pieces that you can focus time and energy on. So the team would be the general partnership team, the people that are actually finding the deal, putting it together, and that are asset managing after you close on the property. And so a couple of things that I would highly recommend is ask for referrals. So who's worked with this general partnership team? How long have they worked with them? What's their communication been like? What would they like to see done differently? And just make sure that you feel 100% comfortable investing with the general partnership team. The next thing would be vetting the market. So markets can dictate the success of a property. So you want to make sure that you're comfortable investing in the city and the state that the property is located in. So do your due diligence. Is the city and state landlord friendly? Does it have a lot of population growth? Does it have business growth? How's the crime in the area? What are the competitive properties doing in the area? All of that is very, very important. And then the third aspect is being able to underwrite the property. So you want to be able to take a look at the numbers and understand what they mean. What is the rent growth? What are the vacancy rates? What's the reversion cap rate? What are the pro forma rents? And what are the expenses? And just make sure that you understand what you're looking at, because the smallest tweaks can make the biggest difference in the returns. So if you have something that's portrayed inaccurately, for instance, let's say someone's saying that they're going to get 6% rent growth over the next 5 years, averaged every single year, that's very aggressive. And, that can make a massive difference on the total returns. Whereas maybe they should be, calculating 2 to 3%. And then the last piece, step number 4, would be vetting the team behind the team. So what CPA are they using? What's their legal team look like? Their cost seg study company, what management company are they using? Have they had experience with them? Those team members are critical to the success as well. So definitely check out the book, but those are the 4 steps, at a 30,000 foot overview.
Mike, could you share some individual stories of individuals or families who have achieved financial freedom through, your guidance in multifamily investing?
Yeah, definitely. So we have over 300 investors that invest with us, pretty regularly, but we have multiple individuals where, they had a 401k, had an IRA, and, I believe their average return was, around that 7 to 9% annually. And they were able to divest some of those funds and use some of their cash flow to invest in our projects. And, I'll just give you a couple examples. Our first project, that 45 unit project that we did, our first syndication, it was in Western Wisconsin, bought it for 2.1 million, sold it for 4.1. We were able to sneak out about a 75% annualized return, and that was a 3-year hold. So about 225% over a 3-year period. So the amount of wealth and passive income that created for, I believe we had 45 individuals that invested in that project, was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, it just changes the way that people can live their lives and, when they can retire. So it's been phenomenal to have a handful of projects like that. Now, is that going to happen every time? Are you going to get a, 70+% annualized return? Absolutely not. Take a look at what's normal. I would say right now, maybe an 18 to 19% annualized return is a pretty conservative approach if you're buying a good deal at a good basis. But yeah, there's a ton of potential in multifamily to get a lot better returns than you can in a lot of other avenues.
Retiring from your corporate career at 34 years old is a massive achievement. What were some pivotal moments or decisions that enable you to make this transition successfully?
Yep. So a few different pivotal moments. So the first was the first house hack that we did that got us involved in in real estate investing. Second would be shifting to multifamily real estate. Because with the single family, truthfully, all I really did was add a second job to my plate. And so shifting to multifamily, took the bulk of that job off my plate. And so that was massive as well. Third avenue would be, just putting my money to work over time. So over the last, 8-9 years that I've been in multifamily, I've been investing, a large sizable chunk into every single one of our deals. And that's allowed me to build my passive income up quite substantially. And, today I'm financially free. So I have enough passive income coming in to cover my expenses, which allows you to take a step away from your corporate career or take some time off or do whatever you'd like to do. So those are 3 pivotal moments for me.
For someone who's completely new to real estate investing, what resources or educational materials do you recommend to get started on the right foot? And not just education part, but from personal experience, what is some advice that, practical advice that you would like to share?
Yeah, I would say first off, start reading books on real estate investing, whatever asset class you're looking to get into. Listen to a lot of podcasts. I mean, there's so much downtime where, you're mowing the lawn or you're cleaning the house or you're driving to your work, and you can be listening to podcasts, divulging and taking in a ton of great information. So that would be a recommendation. As far as books, I started out reading the ABCs of Real Estate Investing by Ken McElroy. Fantastic book, that goes through the ins and outs of multifamily investing. So that's a great resource. Listening to the Multifamily Chronicles, our real estate podcast, the Keeping It Real Estate podcast, all of that's going to give you some great insight. And then for me, because we were looking to be general partners and to be the active investor, we actually hired a mentor about 6 years ago in the multifamily space down in Dallas, Fort Worth. And that really allowed us to alleviate so many mistakes. And it also fueled, our careers in the multifamily space. So that was instrumental to a lot of our success as well. So I would say if you're looking to be an active investor, that would definitely be a recommendation as well.
Like real estate markets vary, right? You have some real estate markets that are booming any given time, even in a down economy. I think that you will have in a down economy, you'll have like most of the markets hurting, and you have some small pockets that are actually prospering, like they're booming. So the question to you is, how do you pick, your winning markets? How do you pick which markets to invest in? In general, what are some principles that you deploy in order to make the right picks?
Yeah. So choosing the market, I would say the city and the state, very important to look at how landlord friendly is the city and state, because that's going to either put a lot of wins at your sales or it's going to create headwinds, and it's going to be really tough to, implement your business plan and to get the success that you're looking to get. So for us, we focus on Texas, Dallas, Fort Worth, and then Nashville and Tennessee, both very landlord friendly. Another thing that we look at is the market and the state business friendly? So for instance, both Texas and Tennessee have zero income tax for individuals. So very appealing to new people moving into the state, and for businesses, they're very business friendly. So you have a lot of businesses popping up in both those markets as well. Population growth is really, really important to us as well, because when you have these larger apartment complexes, the more people that are moving into the market, the easier it is going to be to rent it, to keep your occupancy high, to have options for tenants, to place really good tenants. So, a couple of cool things, Dallas Fort Worth, for young adult population growth, they were number 1 at 1.6% year over year. So phenomenal. Nashville was 11th at about 1.1% for young individuals moving into that market. And those people are, moving into that market, they're going to create families, they're going to grow. And then if you look at employment growth, DFW is at 4.2%, number 1, and Houston was second. I think they were at about 2.8%. Nashville was about 11th at 3.6%. So phenomenal employment growth. And we don't just look at employment growth. It has to be a diverse employment base. And we've made that mistake before. We invested one time in New Mexico, and it was an oil dependent market. COVID hit, oil dropped, negative, and a lot of the jobs disappeared quickly. And we struggled with that property for a couple of years. Luckily, the oil market has come roaring back. And so we should do really well with that project, but you need to make sure that the employment base is really diverse. We also take a look at the crime rates. So once you figure out a market in a city, you want to dive in deeper on each specific project that you're looking at and just make sure that there's not a lot of crime in the area, that the area has really good schools. That's very important for us as well. And then another thing that's really important to us is the affordability gap. So the affordability gap is literally at its high right now. And what that means is, how much does it cost to rent a home or to own a home versus renting an apartment? And if you take a look at it, Nashville right now, $1,341 affordability gap. So to rent an apartment versus owning a home, you're saving $1,341. That's a lot of money, especially for someone that's in that arena. DFW, the affordability gap's about $1,786. So a huge gap. And the bigger the gap is, the better it is for apartments, because people are going to stay in those apartments longer. So those are a few things that we're paying close attention to.
So with the high interest rates, obviously, makes it harder to close on the deals, but at the same time, it makes it easier to sell apartments because there are less people. People are less able to afford buying, purchasing, so eventually they want to rent from you. I mean, from you. That's a great way to look at it. I think those are great principles, and thank you for sharing them with us here.
You're welcome.
Mike, I want to go ask you a personal question next. What advice would you have for a young person getting ready to enter real life, right? Whether they're right out of high school or right out of college, if they went to college after high school, what are some pieces of advice that you would have for them?
Yep. So number one, educate yourself on financial literacy. So whether that be, investing in real estate or whatever avenue that you take, learn about money, learn about investing, educate yourself, read a ton of books, listen to podcasts. Very, very important. Second piece would be put away a good portion of the money that you're making. So if you're just getting out of college and you land a job, let's say for $90,000 a year, try to stash away $20, $30, $40,000 per year if you can. You're used to living on a low income while you're going to college. Keep that going for the next handful of years and stock that money away and invest it in something that's going to be able to multiply it. So that's super important as well. And then just get involved, start investing in real estate, whether it be passive or, if you buy your first, single family home and you house hack it, or you buy a duplex or a triplex. Personally, I would try to, recommend skipping the small stuff and moving up as quick as you can, but just get your foot in the game if you can. Very, very important.
Like in closing of our conversation, we're coming to a close. We're about to wrap up. I do wanted to ask you, is it something you wish you had the opportunity to say and you didn't during our conversation? Or is there an answer to a question, you wish I would have asked and I didn't for whatever reason?
That is a great question. I would say if you are looking to passively invest, another thing that I would pay close attention to is how much time does the general partnership team have to stick into the asset and to make it a success? And you should consider that for yourself as well if you're looking to buy your own, rental property. If you're working full time and you're having a hard time, fitting in your full-time job and your kids or your family, whether it's you or the general partnership team, it's going to be a tough time creating success with that property. So you want to make sure that either you or the general partnership team has enough time and energy and focus on that asset and make it a true success.
Mike, for those in the audience that want to reach out to you, want to connect with you, what are some ways to get in contact with you?
Yeah, great question. So you can go to our website, granitetowersequitygroup.com, and just click on the contact us page, fill that out. That'll allow you to get into our database. We'll schedule a call with you so we can chat a little bit more about multifamily investing and your goals. We also have our free ebook. Like you had mentioned, the 4 steps to successful passive investing. So feel free to check that out. And then my email is mike@granitetowersequitygroup.com if you need that.
Mike Roeder, was a pleasure to have you here today, sir. I truly enjoyed the conversation, very engaging. You answer a lot of the questions that I'm passionate about asking. So I thank you very much for being a good sport and answering all the questions.
Thanks so much for having me on, Adrian. And thanks everyone for listening. I appreciate it.
Everybody, this is Multifamily Chronicles. I'm your host, Adrian Danila. Thank you very much for taking an hour out of your time today to join us. And we hope to see you back here soon. Have a great day.